Greetings, Exiles, and welcome. My name is Jeezy, and I just got done watching through the PoE Early Access livestream, and I just wanted to give you some highlights. So first off, I'm going to start with how to get into the Early Access and when will it be. Well, it will start on December 6th at 11 p.m. PST for anybody who either has spent a cumulative $480 on supporter packs over their account lifetime, or purchases at least the $30 Early Access supporter pack from GGG's website. You can purchase the higher tier supporter packs if you want, and you will still be granted a key, but the lowest amount of money that you will be able to spend to get access is $30. Now, we all know we're already going to be playing the early access. What kind of content can you expect? Well, at the beginning of the early access, there will be 6 classes with 2 ascendancies each. That number is going to be expanded over the course of the early access and up until release. It feels like we get 2 classes of each different type: melee, caster, and ranged, so I'm just going to go down them in order. First off, we have the warrior, who has the ascendancies of Titan and Warbringer. Titan being more slam focused, one gigantic big bonk, extra damage against enemies which are heavy stunned, and seemingly some ways to build up more and larger stuns on an enemy. Next we have Warbringer, which is more ancestral focused, totem focused, and can ignore Warcry cooldowns and explode corpses with Warcries, which is always fun, shouting at corpses. Next we have the Monk, who has the 2 ascendancies of Acolyte of Chayula and the Invoker. The Acolyte is chaos damage and chaos resistance focused, seemingly, giving extra maximum chaos resistance as well as extra damage based on the amount of darkness that you have, which is a replacement for the spirit meter, which is GGG's solution to reservation. Instead of reserving mana, you reserve your spirit. In this case, you turn it into darkness, which gives you extra damage, as well as getting access to instant mana and energy shield leech. So definitely some good synergies with things like Mind Over Matter potentially. The next Monk Ascendancy is the Invoker, which is an elemental melee that seems like it focuses on applying many elemental ailments, and also gets the Unbound Avatar ability, which is very akin to the Warden from PoE 1, seemingly where you build up a bunch of stacks by inflicting elemental ailments, and then pop it as kind of an ultimate ability, probably a duration-based extra damage and elemental ailment conflux. Next, we're going to move on to the caster classes, which are going to be available. The Witch gets the Infernalist Ascendancy, which lets you summon a demon to take some damage for you and attack. You can also transform into a demon, which is essentially an enrage that makes you deal more damage and cast faster at the cost of a stacking damage amp on you and increased damage taken, both of which scale over time. Additionally, you can replace your mana pool with Infernal Flame that builds up as you cast. Once it fills, it will damage you. Seems like it can grant you benefit with Ignite Conflux and Ignite Synergy, as well as seeming like it synergizes well with cast when damage taken, if that's a trigger that they have, which, you know, it's PoE, of course they're gonna. The Witch also has the Blood Mage Ascendancy, which adds additional life costs to skills for benefits like Life Leech from spells, Energy Shield from equipped body armor being converted to maximum life, and critical strike damage per maximum life. Next up in the caster archetype, we have the Sorceress. First off, she has the Stormweaver Ascendancy, which is completely lightning focused, seems like a very high synergy with crit, proccing these elemental storms on crit, as well as high synergy with shock. Pretty basic, but surely there's some crazy stuff you can do with that. Next off, we have the Chronomancer Ascendancy for the Sorceress, which is very timey-wimey. You end up being able to stop time for enemies around you, use a Temporal Rift to return you to where you were a few moments ago, and reset all of your cooldowns. Seemingly a very simple on the face, probably very complex to play kind of class. Next we move on to the ranged classes. First off, the Mercenary. The Witch Hunter Ascendancy is kind of a spellbreaker type that interrupts enemy concentration. The way that this is tagged makes me think that concentration is a new mechanic that we don't really have details on yet, but it seems to reduce the frequency of enemy casts based on how much you interrupt their concentration. Additionally, Sorcery Ward, which I'm guessing is just going to reduce the amount of damage that you take from spells. Then you have, you know, the downside of the reduced armor and evasion. And you also get a nice unconditional 10% explode for 100% life, and of course you're a Witch Hunter, so that's going to be extra effective against the undead. Next up for the Mercenary, we have the Gemling Legionnaire Ascendancy, which is, as it might sound, very gem focused. You get quality on all skill gems, extra skill slots, and extra benefits for every 3 of a certain color support that you have, in this case maximum resistance. Also looks to have an attribute fixer in the way of adaptive capabilities, just for gems only, but since you're going to be having a bunch of different kinds of support gems and each of those are going to have their own attribute requirements, you can pick up this and just have a bunch of one stat, strength, intelligence, or dexterity, and that will fix all of your gem attribute requirements. This one seems super versatile, like you can probably do a bunch of fun stuff with it. Since you get a bunch of extra skill slots and you can only actively press so many buttons, you're probably going to want to put a bunch of triggers on those. And finally, we come to the Ranger, where you're going to see some familiar ascendancies here, starting off with the Deadeye, which is very similar to the Deadeye from PoE 1. You get endless munitions for 1 additional projectile. You have Tailwind, which is increasing speed when you use an ability, but you lose it when you get hit. So synergizing very highly with evasion and just dodging in general. You get to ignore accuracy completely as a mechanic. I think this will be a very simple, straightforward, very zoom, kind of squishy ascendancy. And then also for the Ranger, we have the Pathfinder Ascendancy. Something we learned is that flasks are kind of gone. You have a life flask and a mana flask, and then some charms, which will be fixing those holes in your build that flasks were fixing before. So what is Pathfinder good at now? Well, they've still got the poison identity with poison prolif and doubled max poisons. Now the doubled max poisons is interesting because it implies some things about poison as a mechanic changing as a whole. So we'll have to see what that means. And it looks like they also have a strange ascendancy node, which they can choose a type of elemental or perhaps maybe physical or chaos concoction to throw out, which also consumes their flask charges, very similar to explosive concoction or poisonous concoction from PoE 1. Now, that's a lot already, and these are just the ones that are going to be available at the beginning of early access, with more coming. They've also said that each class has around 20 main skills associated with them, but in true PoE fashion, any skill can be used as any class, as long as the weapon type permits. Now, with all of this talk of new ascendancies, there needs to be a new way to ascend, right? There's no lab anymore in PoE 2. There are actually a couple of ways that you're going to be getting your ascendancy skill points. In the early access, you will have access to 2 of these systems, with a third coming later towards the full release. Beginning with the Trial of Chaos, you might notice a familiar face. The Trial Master is here to test you. And if you're familiar with Ultimatum, it's essentially that, but revamped a little bit. If you're not, Ultimatum is a mechanic from Path of Exile 1, whereby the Trial Master will present you with a set of modifiers that will affect a wave of enemies that you have to go kill, or an objective that you have to complete, while under the effect of these negative modifiers. At the end of whatever trial he has for you, he will present to you another one with an additional reward and an additional modifier that you have to struggle against. You can choose to exit this deal with him at any time and claim the rewards that you have already gotten, or you can try to strive onwards. If you fail at any point during the ultimatum, you die, or you fail whatever objective he has set out for you, then you will forfeit all of your rewards, and worst of all, he will never let you live it down. But in this case, if you make it through all the way to the end of his 10 trials, you will completed the Trial of Chaos and you will unlock 2 Ascendancy points, as well as whatever rewards he was offering you along the way. But of course, variety is the spice of life, and in this case you have another option for Ascension. If you absolutely cannot stand the Trial Master and you don't like Ultimatum, you might find better luck in the Trial of the Sekhemas, which is a Sanctum-inspired roguelike dungeon, which will take you through a bunch of branching paths where you will get boons and afflictions to either help or hinder you along the way. Within the Trial of the Sekhemas, you are subjected to their customs, which means that every time you take a hit, it damages your honor, as a true Sekhemas would never. Very similar to Sanctum, in that every attack in here is supposed to be dodgeable. Every trap is supposed to be dodgeable, so that you actually can do the entire thing without getting hit. And if you do so and succeed, then you will be, like the Trial of Chaos, granted your 2 Ascendancy points. You will also be able to unlock these chests at the end, very similar to the Endgame Labyrinth, with any of the bronze, silver, or golden keys that you have acquired throughout the trials. Now, even once your Ascendancies are filled out, both of these systems seem to be key pillars of the endgame content that's available to you, as they each have their own special rewards and meta progressions. But the primary endgame is still to come. They've covered a little bit about what the campaign is going to look like for a first playthrough. 3 acts will be available on December 6th. They eventually are planning 6 acts, but those ones are not quite ready yet. So what they're going to be doing is similar to the early life of PoE 1, where they're going to have us play through 3 acts and then repeat those 3 acts at a higher difficulty. After that, it's time to arrive at Endgame, and it seems like they've really given this a lot of thought. They don't want this to roll out of the gate without enough content. The primary endgame is still the Atlas, but instead of the Atlas of Worlds, it is more now just like the Atlas of World. This is you're traveling around this procedurally generated landscape populated by these maps and accessed by waystones. Waystones are basically maps in that they can be rolled and that they drop with a tier, determining the difficulty of the area. It appears that map type is determined by the node you pick on the Atlas. So the content you run is the combination of the waystone that you have and the zones you have discovered. So you can put a tier 3 waystone rolled rare on a forest map, for example, and now you're running a tier 3 forest. So this forces you to do varied content instead of spamming the same map hundreds of times, as you actually have to traverse this physical landscape to get to the types of maps that you want. There are structures in the world which can be found to lift the fog of the Atlas, as you can only see so far, but upon completing one of these towers, they will lift some of that fog so you can kind of plan your route outwards, maybe see a desired biome. Some key changes to the Atlas here is that 6 portals will spawn upon consuming a waystone to enter the area. You can enter and leave to transport loot. You can take 6 players in co-op, but death for you means that that map is failed for you. In solo, that just means that that map is done. You can't go there anymore. You need to find another way around or go elsewhere. In co-op, that means that you are done personally in that map, but your co-op partners can still continue. They didn't say exactly what that means for progression on the Atlas and how it's shared, whether it's based on the party leader's Atlas or what, that's still up in the air, but I'm sure we'll figure that out pretty shortly upon the beginning of early access. Now, a couple more key things to note about the Atlas system is that not all maps are going to have a boss now. There are going to be varying Atlas objectives for completion of the map. In maps that do not have a boss, your objective will be to kill all of the rares in a map. And once there are less than 50 monsters left in a map, all of the remaining rares will be pointed out to you. So full clear, then kill rares. In a map that has a boss, the goal is to kill all rares and the boss. And there is actually an incentive for doing that. They stated since not all maps are going to have a boss, it's going to be about 1 in 4 maps have a boss. And since you can choose where you go, you can actually choose to fight the boss or just do maps that don't have a boss, which is great for build diversity. If you're struggling with bosses, or maybe you just like blasting monsters and don't like fighting bosses, you can go and do that. If you do, however, choose to go and fight those bosses, there will be a Atlas skill tree that you can get points for by hunting those bosses to make your boss hunting better, more rewarding. The same is true for many, but not all of the League mechanics, which will be returning from Path of Exile 1. The ones that we definitely know have progression skill trees, as you can see them in the background here, are Ritual, Delirium, Expedition, and Breach, with the Atlas looking to have its own small tree as well. Now, long before my time in Path of Exile 1, I heard tale of piety farming, when piety was the absolute pinnacle of the Path of Exile farming experience. And I'm actually super excited to announce that they're bringing that back. Piety farming is coming back. They were going over Pinnacle Content, and they said we need some Pinnacle Content, and what better boss to throw in than, no, I'm joking. But Pinnacle Content is coming to this game as well within the early access. What they've shown us so far is that there are 3 separate factions which reside in these citadels. And there is a big bad in there with a couple of lieutenants that you have to take down in order. You got to take down the 2 lieutenants without dying in order to be given a chance to fight the big boss. That big boss carries a key or a crest of some sort, and once you've acquired all 3 crests, you are allowed access to this monolithic citadel at the center of this massive labyrinthine structure. They have not spoiled what's in here for us, so I guess I'll join you there on day 1. Maybe 4 or 5 hours in. I'd say 5 hours, and then Ben will have killed whatever's in here, and we'll all know by then. Yeah, that's basically all I've got. I know most people probably already watched the live stream, but if you had a very limited amount of time and you wanted the highlights from the stream, I figured I would just throw this together, as this is, 15 minutes compared to the hour and a half that was the live stream. There was a lot in this live stream, and I'm super excited to get my hands on PoE 2. I hope you are as well. If this video helped you out and you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below. Consider subscribing. I'm going to be doing some more PoE 2 coverage once the early access actually starts in earnest. In the meantime, you can come on over to my Twitch at ds_GZ. I'll be streaming over there almost every day up until that. Not really doing much PoE 2 stuff at the moment, or PoE in general. Going through Satisfactory still, and having a lot of fun with that. So yeah, and if you would like to support the channel and my content creation, please consider becoming a member of the channel or joining me over on Patreon. But as always, those things are never required and always appreciated. But regardless of how you choose to spend your time up until PoE 2, I hope that it's good. And like always, I'm GZ, and I'll see you in the next one.